Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start in about 2 minutes, and we hopefully will have additional members of the committee to come. Strickland, Ted Gaines. Who else is missing?
Mr. Calderon.
Majority Leader Calderon, and who else?
Mr. Blumenfield.
And Bob Blumenfield. So if these members are out there somewhere in the Capitol, it would be helpful if they could come to the Arts Entertainment Committee. We're now calling the Assembly Committee on Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, and Internet Media to order. And Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll.
Davis.
Here.
Silva.
Here.
Blumenfield.
Here.
Calderon. De Leon.
Here.
Gaines.
Here.
Gatto.
Here.
Monning.
Here.
Strickland.
We have a quorum, and we will begin our meeting on hearing SB 1098, Athlete Agents. Sorry about that. Welcome, Senator.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm here on SB 1098, as you mentioned, dealing with uniform athlete agents. And first of all, I'd like to let you know that this bill is part of the Uniform Law Commission's work. California is one of the 50 state members of this commission, and we work on legislation to make things more efficient across state lines in certain topic areas that make sense. So currently, there's no state regulatory body empowered to deny or revoke an applicant's authority to act as an athlete agent based on that person's conduct or how they do their job. So in other words, they are sanctioned by the state, but we don't really have rules to ensure any standards of conduct. This bill will regulate the actions of athlete agents and allow the state to assess penalties or revoke the registration of an athlete agent whose conduct has a significant adverse effect on his or her fitness to act as an athlete agent. This language that we're asking you to adopt today has already been adopted in 40 other states. As we know, sports is big business, especially at the collegiate level. And as we saw in recent sanctions at USC, if the rules are not followed, sadly, schools can get into trouble and potentially lose millions of dollars. Senate Bill 1098 will protect our student athletes and allow agents to operate more efficiently in California and across the nation. As I think you probably know in this committee, students, sometimes if the rules are not followed correctly, they can get into trouble and lose their opportunity to compete. So it's extremely important that our athlete agents are following standards and taking care of these important workers in our economy. I'm pleased to have here to testify today one of our former colleagues, Senator Byron Scher, who's a member also of the Uniform Law Commission and has worked on this issue over the years. And also with me today is Barry Brokaw, who is here representing the Association of Talent Agents, who are also in support of this measure.
Thank you, Senator, and welcome, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Byron Scher. I'm here on behalf of the California Uniform Law Commission and the National Uniform Law Commission, which is the sponsor of this measure. When I was a member of the Assembly, I used to be the Assembly appointee to the Commission, and then when I was in the Senate for 8 years, I also represented the Senate in the California and National Commissions, and I continue to serve on that body. This is, as Senator Corbett pointed out, the Uniform Law Commission drafts and presents to state legislatures measures that in subject areas where it is thought that uniformity among the states is important and desirable. And this measure was drafted by the Uniform Law Commission when I was in the Senate. Actually, I carried this very same bill, and at that time, not many states had adopted this measure, and while we did move the bill to the governor's desk, the legislature actually passed it. The governor, Davis, at that time, vetoed the bill. Now that, as Senator Corbett pointed out, some 40 jurisdictions have adopted this act, 38 states, and I think the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. It's important, I think, that California should do that. This is an area where uniformity among the states is important. These athlete agents operate across the state. Currently, they register with the Secretary of State in California, but they are not really regulated in a way where their conduct can be policed and where there's problems where they can be disciplined and even lose their registration. So we think it's important that California join these other jurisdictions. This is a useful bill, not just for the student athletes who might lose their eligibility if they engage in conduct which is not permitted, but it's also important to the athlete agents because if they qualify in one state, they can the rules will be the same in another state, and so uniformity indeed is important here. It's also important for the educational institutions because if there's misconduct involving their student athletes, it not only taints the reputation of the university, but many of their athletic contests, the outcome can be reversed. So this is an important area for uniformity, and that's why we're sponsoring this bill, and we hope that you will pass it.
And Mr.
ma'am.
Chair, I do know that you were interested in hearing the reason why we chose Department of Industrial Relations as opposed to the Department of Consumer Affairs to do the regulation. I think Senator Schumer may have a position on that he'd like to share with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, well, while the Uniform Law Commission does encourage uniformity, it's recognized that each state will adopt the most appropriate agency in that state to enforce this law. And some states have similar agencies to our Department of Industrial Relations, and it seems to be, at least on subject area, the most important appropriate agency to do that, and by doing it, it doesn't in any way affect the uniformity because it was recognized at the outset each state will choose the agency that where the subject is most appropriate, and we think that's true here. This is a appropriate agency for California.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Senator. Ms. Broad.
Mr. Chairman and members, Barry Brokaw on behalf of the Association of Talent Agents. Another reason why the Department of Industrial Relations might be the appropriate place to place this new jurisdictional oversight is because talent agents are licensed under the Department of Industrial Relations. The Talent Agency Act is in the code there, so that's where there's a nexus also. Let me tell you why the talent agents are supporting this. By the way, the talent agencies I represent or the talent agent names that you've heard over the years: William Morris, Endeavor, Creative Arts Agency, ICM, the major agencies that handle actors and producers and directors and other artists and performers. They also are getting into the sports agency business as well, and sports management. We helped draft, and I was involved with that back in 1996, the Miller-Ayala Act. And we thought that was a good foundation piece of legislation. It's worked well over the years. We support the NCRUSL effort and support the efforts that Senator Schumer and Senator Corbett have been working on for some time. The talent agency business is changing, and we think it's in need of an upgrade. Some of the conflict of interest provisions need to be strengthened, and this bill does that as well. For instance, when we did the talent agent, the Miller-Ayala Act in '96, the talent agents weren't, talent agencies weren't representing sports personnel, sports performers, and now they are. They're also representing leagues and teams. And one of the common things that happens is when an organization, a sports organization, builds a new stadium, they seek naming rights for the stadium. And they'll hire a creative artist agency or ICM or William Morris to try to put together a deal. And that may result in a new name for the new ballpark at San Francisco, AT&T, and there are major rights to that and tremendous revenues that come from those types of activities. And those benefit not just the team or the league, but also the professional athletes that will be playing for those teams because it produces more revenue for their benefit. So just trying to give you a little flavor of what talent agents do now, in addition to representing the performers that you've come to love and respect and enjoy watching. So for those reasons, because we think the Miller-Ayala law does need to be updated, and this bill is absolutely on the right track, we support the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brokaw. Members, any questions of the witnesses in support? Question. Yes, sir. Mr. Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In student athletes, oftentimes parents and the student are not perhaps as educated or sophisticated as they should be in dealing with a major university. And in Southern California, several years ago, not to name any names, there's a big issue where some trust and some laws are broken. If this bill would have been in place then, would this have been prevented?
I think so. As I mentioned earlier in my remarks, unfortunately, we don't have a system that requires that any sort of standards, that there's any set of knowledge or experience that an athlete agent must have. This bill would allow that these standards are available and that they can be enforced. So, in fact, you would no longer be able to be registered with the state if you did not have the knowledge to be able to truly represent an athlete agent. So this would require a bit more professionalism and, some actual regulation in this field. And I do believe that that sort of situation would have been prevented if we had this sort of a law in place.
Okay, Senator, help me. So what you're saying is more responsibility would be on the agent,
Yes.
which would prevent this type of action in dealing with a youngster
That's right.
that is not as...
That's right. Right now, you just have to register. And there is no mechanism for, making that person be sanctioned or losing their ability to be registered with the state if they, in fact, are not representing that student in a way that they're protected from losing eligibility or not following the rules.
one thing that has always amazed me is that a coach could do some illegal recruiting, for example, and it's investigated and they found out that some rules were broken. So the school is on probation. The coach can leave and go to another school and continue coaching and pull some more shenanigans, but yet the school is being penalized. And I've always felt that it should be with the coach rather than the school, and I feel that the agents have a certain responsibility also, and if
Yes.
we don't have rules that regulate them, I can see where things get out of hand.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to prevent, the fact that they don't have any rules that they must follow to ensure that they protect their clients, as opposed to maybe giving bad advice and not understanding their trade. People who aren't representing their clients, there'd be a mechanism now to remove their state registration. They would
Well,
no
you
longer
have
be
a-
able to say that I'm sanctioned by the state to be an athlete agent. They would lose that.
And you have a student that's unsophisticated,
Yes.
and the parents perhaps are in the same situation, so it kind of paints the student athlete in a bad light when it should be an agent that should be held more responsible.
Yes.
Mr. Sill, if I can just comment briefly, talent agents are licensed already, and they have a full regulatory process. So the major talent agencies that you're familiar with, there are sanctions that can be levied against people who are violating the law and violating their practice standards. But there are a lot of people who call themselves agents, who represent themselves to be agents, and they aren't licensed talent agents, yet they still operate as agents, and that's who this bill really seeks to rein in and get some authority and oversight over. Because if you're a talent agency and you're working for creative artists and you're doing something untoward, and that hasn't happened, by the way, there's a way to reach them now under current law, but there's a whole host of folks who call themselves agents that really aren't licensed and they're unregulated.
Okay, well, a big question that I have, and I understand what you're trying to do, and I really feel that there's a need for that. How does the amount of the fees enter into this? Who controls this? And I mean, I can see where you charge fees to be an agent so high that it's going to be an oligopoly of agents that can afford to participate.
Well, you go ahead.
Well, the fees of the athlete agent, one of the things that the law requires is that the athlete agents are required to disclose the amount and the method of calculating the fees that they charge. As far as protecting the institution, the point you mentioned previously, this Uniform Act requires the agent within 72 hours after the athlete signs the contract to give notice to the institution, so that if there's anything improper in the contract, the more sophisticated institution would be able to take corrective action.
But are you suggesting that an agent fees be based on the amount of consideration?
No.
Well, this act doesn't address, I don't believe, the fees themselves, but
Okay.
but it's a disclosure to make sure that the method of calculating them is actually
talking about the
revealed
DIR.
as part of the transaction to
Yes,
the.
and the fee, are you talking about the fee that the state charges in order for a person to register?
That's what I was talking about.
Yes,
and I
yes.
thought we
Because
went
the other side is set under law, by the way. What an agent can charge a client, that's set under law.
Yes.
It's capped at 10%. The practice for sports agents tends to be even less than that, but that's capped under law. But you're talking about the regulatory fee.
regulatory,
Yes.
right? And I think we got
That-
sideways. And I didn't mean
Yeah,
to
Ms.
go
Strickland.
that.
That is set up by the department, and the premise in the bill is that the fee is to be charged to support the activities of the department. That's another important part of this bill. It's self-supporting. That was a concern of ours as the bill went forward. It will allow the Department of Industrial Relations, if they continue to be the regulating body, to charge a fee just to help support their registration services, to keep track of the athlete agents and ensure that they're following the rules and the laws, and also can do the regulatory purpose of the bill, and that is to ensure that they, if they will lose their registration if they are not following the rules. And there's various different rules. For example, one of the very important rules is that an athlete agent, if they do acquire money from the athlete, they have to keep the funds in trust, so they can be kept safe and they can't abscond with those funds. So there's certain rules of conduct that the Department of Industrial Relations will have the opportunity to ensure are complied with, and if they're not, this person can no longer call themselves a registered athlete agent by the state of California. They will
Okay,
lose
thank
their
you for
license.
that, and I want to give Assemblywoman Strickland also an opportunity.
Thank you. Senator, does that mean that the DIR has no limit on the fees that they can charge athlete agents?
Well, no, the legislation sets it up so they can charge it just for the purpose of the fund to run the program. We didn't specifically dictate that amount because we want to make sure they have the opportunity to adequately fund their regulatory process.
I understand. I think one of my concerns is as the program grows and expands to do everything that you envision it to do, that it might end up being more costly than you might anticipate. So there is no limit then on to what DIR can charge if indeed as their regulatory functions expand, the cost of doing those functions or the need for more employees expands, then the ability to raise the fee would also be unlimited?
I don't think it would be unlimited because it would be based on, the actual program. But if you are interested in offering some language that may somehow limit to make sure that the funding is used or the fees are reasonable and connected to a reasonable operation of this regulatory program, I'd be fine with that. This is not any attempt to raise money for one department or another. It's just to give them an opportunity to regulate and protect these athlete agents.
I don't mean to assert that it would indeed be a moneymaker for them,
but I
but
understand
that
your concern.
as the program expands.
I totally understand your concern. And I'd be glad to work with you on language that could help limit that and address your concerns. I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, you had also said that if an athlete agent doesn't have the knowledge to be able to be an athlete agent, is there a test then that the DIR would create and then hand out to folks so that then they're, as the state gives their stamp of approval to athlete agents, we can say, yes, we know that they have this knowledge base because they've taken this test?
They would have to file specific information with regard to their background, their criminal and disciplinary record, their training and experience, and they would be required to advise the athlete, which is their client. They advise them as to the availability of this information as well. As I mentioned already, the athlete agent would have to establish a trust fund and deposit all funds received on behalf of the athlete. And if they're providing financial services to the athlete, and would also have to disclose any potential conflicts of interest.
Does your bill lay out the required background and expertise that an athlete agent must have in order to be licensed by the state?
Again, since the department is setting up this program, we wanted to allow them to be able to be a partner in determining exactly what that program would be. As you know, it is difficult sometimes for departments to receive prescribed information as to how they're going to impose a regulatory program, so that there's not strict prescriptions, but there's guidelines in this bill, and certainly the legislature and myself would be very interested in providing the oversight to make sure that they carry out the intent of the bill.
In your bill, what is the mechanism for curtailing the DIR's ability to curtail this bad behavior of athlete agents?
They can, of course, deregister them.
No. How do they find out about it?
It would be by reporting. An athlete, of course, could report it to the DIR. It also allows for civil action for damages if they are in violation of the contract with the athlete.
So the only way for the state to find out that there has been a violation is for a report to come forward? Is there any...
Well, I'm sure if the agency would wish to have an increased regulatory presence where they had investigators,
that's my question about the fees, as if that indeed is their vision.
Right.
That what then are the costs, and then how that.
Well, you can have it either way. We can encourage them to do that, and there's a cost that goes with that, or we can allow it to happen as a report. And I would believe very strongly that any athlete that was interested in any athlete that had been wronged would certainly report it to somebody and want to make sure that it was corrected and that agent was no longer doing business in the state of California. And so would the university. A university who has unfortunately, the risk of losing thousands and thousands of dollars and having their athletic program be discontinued based on eligibility issues caused by an unknowing or an agent that didn't have the right talent to protect their athlete. I'm sure a university would make sure that that agent was no longer in business.
Does the NCAA currently have a body to which you can appeal if you are a student athlete and you've been wronged by a talent agent?
I'm not sure about the answer to that question. Senator Scher, do you know?
Okay. I'm not sure what the rules of the NCAA are. That's not addressed in the bill itself.
Right. We just want to make sure we don't have registered agents saying they are registered by the state of California wronging athletes. We want to just make sure that there's some standards.
Okay. Would you cite the recent USC penalties as an example of why the state should be involved in this?
I think that the recent USC penalties may have been able to be avoided if we had some regulation of athlete agents.
Well, I think actually the problem in the USC situation was with a coach who was involved, I think, with the student athlete, and I'm not sure that it was.
So then your
the
bill
athlete
wouldn't have
agent.
been able to address that because
Well,
it would.
neither would the current law in California.
Okay, here's my question.
After she finishes, Mr. Gaines.
Thank you. I'm not exactly sure why the state needs to be involved in this. It seems to me that we already have a regulatory body called the NCAA that assess some fines and penalties and such on all sorts of athletes and programs and such that they found to be in violation of the rules, which you're just asking the DIR to duplicate here. You don't have a way for the state to find out how these things exist other than having someone bring it to their attention, for which I believe there already is recourse if you've been wronged. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I would think that the USC case would show you that the NCAA already has this under control. I mean, I'm very concerned that because there is no cap on the fees that are going to be able to be charged to athlete agents, that the state may find that this is an area that this is an area that they can expand without limit the oversight onto athlete agents without legislative.
Let me address that. When you asked the question earlier, I thought you were asking specifically as to what the fee would be, which obviously we do want to make sure that the department has an opportunity to weigh in on what their needs might be with regard to this program. But the actual funding for the program would be like any other program. It would be appropriated in the budget every year. So any concern that you might have about, a wide open number would be capped by virtue of the budget process. So it could be regulated. It will be regulated under the budget process. And also just to, wait, excuse me. Let me just finish. I just want to comment on this question about should we have this program? Is it duplicative? Here's the problem. We currently register athlete agents in California. There are no restrictions or standards as part of that. They just register, I'm an athlete agent. They now have a certificate where they can go and convince young athletes that they will charge them money and they will protect them from harm. And they will conduct their business in a professional way and ensure that they don't lose their livelihood for the rest of their lives because the agent didn't understand the intricacies of their eligibility requirements. We have no ability whatsoever as a state of California to pull that registration back. So these people, under our good name, registered under the auspices of the state of California, can go out and rip people off, and we can't do anything about it. This bill would allow for rules to be in place to protect those athletes, allow their money to be taken care of, be put in trust, and allow the state to now say, if you are not going to conduct yourself professionally and you're going to rip off these people and you're going to cause ruin to their careers, you no longer can use the good name of the state of California. And that's what this bill does. And it also allows us to be in compliance with the uniform laws of another almost 40 other states.
Mr. Gaines.
I have one last point. Well, it seems to me, though, if you say it's controlled, that funding for this is controlled by appropriation by the legislature, but you also said it's self-funding. So, therefore, those things seem to be contradictory, that the funding. But my last question is the Department of Industrial Relations able to assess penalties or fines on the athlete agents?
Well, first of all, the regular understanding of self-funded as intended by this bill and is the regular use of that term is that the program helps pay for itself. So the Department of Industrial Relations would not have to draw from other programs that it has to fund this. So this would allow a fee to help pay for the cost of that regulation. So that's what is meant by that. Under the bill, the penalties would include, there could be a civil action to recover damages for any violation, and let me just take a look at this. Right. Right. The revocation of license, which I've already mentioned. So that is their supreme power. They can basically say you can no longer do business as an athlete agent in the state of California. That's about as strong as it gets.
Okay, are they able to assess fines or penalties on that athlete agent if the I guess, violation is not warranting the
I guess if they would like to make that part of their regulatory program, we would see if that should be part of the program or not.
So that is left up to DIR then to determine
Yes.
if it would like to charge fees of any amount, and setting those guidelines would be done by DIR.
It's not of any amount because
Okay,
the
not
budget
fees,
process.
penalties or fines. That's what I mean. I apologize.
I think they would probably have to get some sort of approval for that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just really concerned that we don't have an idea of what this will look like in implementation, that the bill does not set enough guidelines, and I think it duplicates what we already have. And if people are, if there are students that have been taken advantage of, they already have the opportunity to seek recourse through the court system, which your bill just says they can do. So I think this bill really needs to be worked out much more extensively. Thank you.
I'd be glad to consider any recommendations or suggestions you have with regard to that. But I haven't heard any.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the bill specifically requires the department to establish its fees by regulation. And, of course, any regulations by an administrative body are subject to review by the, as I remember it, the Office of Administrative Law. So there is a procedure, and that office makes sure that fee schedules only support the activities for which the fees are.
You mean fines and penalties on a talent agent versus what they charge
about
the
the
regulators?
fees. The fines, the powers under the Uniform Act, the major power is to, for misconduct, is suspend or revoke the license, which of course is the athlete agent is the main sanction against them. But then, in addition, there is the ability to assess this a civil penalty, and there's a procedure for do that where it can be challenged as appropriate.
Mr. Gaines. Thank you, Ms. Strickland.
Excuse me. My question is that isn't this a duty of the NCAA? I mean, it seems that there are. I mean, obviously, when a school is in violation, they step in and.
Yes.
I mean, there's a huge economic penalty to university for violations that occur with student athletes. Now, I don't know to what degree they regulate agents through that process. I guess
Not
that.
at all.
Right.
Okay.
They don't.
The NCAA regulates the member.
The member
institutions for
entities,
misconduct
right.
by the institutions.
Right. And if the
but doesn't, as far as I know, does not address activities by the athlete agents.
right, that's a state issue, the state regulatory issue, and as already mentioned, we do register athlete agents. I think at the very least, members of the legislature would want to make sure that that program actually works and that people are not allowed to be registered with the state of California if they have not complied with certain basic standards, to protect the financial interests of those individuals and also protect their eligibility. I mean, it is a huge problem. People are being ripped off, yet they are able to continue to maintain their registration as a state athlete agent. Why would we even have a registration for individuals without any sort of ability to remove their registration if they're not acting in the best interest of their clients? We have many examples of that with other professional other people who are professionals, whether they're doctors, lawyers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think athlete agents should also, if they're registered with the state of California, should have to comply with some very basic standards so that their clients are not ripped off.
Okay. Another question, if I could just get a question from Barry, if you don't mind, of clarification. In terms of, you indicated there's 40 other states that have, I guess, a similar regulatory system. Is this identical to those other states, or are we deviating in what we're presenting here in California?
Well,
That's actually a question for Senator Scher.
Commissioner, I think they're substantially identical in the substantive requirements.
And this bill is supported by the Uniform Law Commission, which tries to promote uniformity. But as I indicated earlier, in terms of which agency in the different states, obviously each state decides which is the more appropriate agency. On your NCAA is in support of the bill. University of California supports the bill. The state universities support the bill. And I believe USC supports the bill.
Yes,
so it has
they all
strong
do.
support among the athletic community.
Okay.
One last question, Mr. Gaines.
Thank you. And that has to do with the fee issue. I've got, I think the bill has merit, but I've got real concerns about the fee issue and that not being defined. And I think that if it's being promoted by agents that they want to self-regulate in a sense, I can go down that path and look at it, but we have to have some definition of what that fee amount is. And I know we're in a policy committee here, and it'll go through appropriations and to the floor. But
you can certainly suggest any thoughts you have on how to adjust those fees. If you have suggestions, we'd be glad to take them. I'm not.
I would just like to see them clearly defined, and I don't know if you've done that research in terms of what that will be.
As a representative of the to-be-regulated community, we're here in support of the bill. We have confidence that the fees are going to be what they're set out to be, enough to cover the implementation, the oversight of the program. And again, we view this as two halves of a problem. You have the NCAA violation issue, and you have some people who purport to be agents who are not conducting themselves in the manner they should be. We think if you have appropriate oversight at both ends, you've got a package that works, and you have a mechanism that works well under state law.
Okay, I'll support this, but what I'd like to do is see what that regulatory fee is and have it clearly defined, make sure it's not impacting our budget in a very tough budget year.
Fair enough. I totally agree with you, and this bill passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee based on those very same representations, so I'm with you on it.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Mr. Marning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to belabor this, I just want to offer my support and to point out this is designed to protect student athletes, and the fact that the state is already registering these agents. All we're seeking to do is prescribe, if you're going to be registered in the state of California, you're going to abide by certain uniform code provisions that have been adopted by close to 40 states. It brings uniformity. It brings protection to student athletes. If you just look in the language of the bill, it requires certain warnings to be provided to students and arguably their families and parents in bold font, capital letters about the risks that might be assumed by a family and the duties of the agent. So I strongly support this. I think on the fee issue, if the agents are supportive of the department establishing a fee schedule that will cover the costs of administration of this, it could perhaps be further refined. I hear the author's commitment to that. I'm strongly in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Blumenfield.
I just want to add my voice to that. I thank the author for bringing this forward. I think it's an important protection for student athletes, and I move the bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
The bill has been appropriately moved and seconded, moved by Blumenfield and seconded by Monning. Are there any other witnesses in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Karen French on behalf of the University of California. We're in support of this measure. We believe that our athletic departments will be able to better inform and protect students as they may move into professional careers. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other witnesses in support, witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, I think we will, let me just simply say in summary that this bill creates an opportunity for the regulation of the agents so that not only that schools can be better managed in terms of the interest of athletes, but also to make sure that athletic agents are acting on behalf in the best interest of athletes as well. We've raised many issues in terms of criteria, reasonable fees, and also consequences that might occur. And we know that through working not only with those of us here in the legislature as the author, Senator Corbin, has expressed, but that in addition to that, we have an opportunity to work with the department and other stakeholders in formulating some results that might be appropriate policy that is made not unilaterally, but made in a consensual process that I think will result in the kind of policy of which we all can abide by, including specifically the athletic agents. And with that, Madam Clerk, I will call for the roll.
The motion is a due pass to judiciary. Davis?
Aye.
Davis, aye. Silva?
Aye.
Silva, aye. Blumenfield?
Aye.
Blumenfield, aye. Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. De Leon? Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Gatto?
Aye.
Gatto, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Strickland? Strickland, no.
That bill is out.
Thank you very much, members, and I'm glad to work on the issues that have been raised here in the committee.
Now, this bill, you have one additional bill,
Yes,
I guess.
Mr.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. I was hoping I do have someone I do need to speak to
Okay.
before I bring this bill up.
I
So
appreciate that.
I would be glad to
I appreciate that.
yield to. Oh, where did he go?
Calderon?
Yield to Senator Calderon
Okay,
to
I
maybe do
appreciate
his
that
bills,
very
and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Thank
Hopefully
you
he'll-
so much.
I think he was out. He'll come back right over.
Yeah, I think
Can we?
yes.
Well,
the other one, the one who's not in the room. Yeah, the imposter.
Well, we'll just wait for him momentarily. We'll take a temporary
I'll tell you.
recess for 2 minutes, but don't leave, please. Senator Calderon, thank you, sir, for being here. We'll reconvene our committee. We have Senator Calderon here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Did you have any preference in the order that I present tonight?
You have SB 1131.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll start with that. Mr. Chairman and members, SB 1131 would prohibit the state from expending any state funds for the purpose of filming or producing commercials or other film materials outside of the state. As you are all aware, the motion picture industry is an essential source of economic activity, of tax revenues and jobs and tourism for California. Film, television, and commercial production activity contributes more than $40 billion to California's economy. And the industry directly employs almost 300,000 workers. The average daily shooting costs on a feature film on TV series run from $150,000 to $250,000 per day. Now that's actual dollars that each production spends on groceries, gas, building supplies, and paychecks. Every time a production chooses to go outside of the state, California loses not only jobs, but it loses tax revenues. Because of that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. Any witnesses in support or witnesses opposed? With that, let's call for the... any questions from the members? Comments? Mr. Gaines.
AB 1778 was another piece of similar legislation, and I'm just wondering what the difference is between this piece of legislation and that one.
1778, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
1778 is actually an appropriate, plan on working with Assemblymember Liu on this. It's an appropriate exception or carve-out, if you will, to my bill because it has to do strictly with product placement, not actual filming of commercials or promotional items outside of the state.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions from the membership? If not, I think that this bill will certainly be a good policy for us, and I'll ask now for the clerk to call the roll.
Need a motion.
It's a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Monning and second by Majority Leader Calderon.
Davis?
Aye.
Davis, aye. Silva?
No.
Silva, no. Blumenfield? Calderon?
Aye.
Calderon, aye. De Leon? Gaines? Gaines, no. Gatto?
Aye.
Gatto, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Strickland? Strickland, no.
The bill's on call, and we have members out.
Needs one more.
Thank you.
Need one more.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay. And that's SCR 101.
Yes, that's our next measure I'm taking up, Mr. Chairman and members. Today, I bring before you SCR 101. It's concurrent resolution to honor the work of the National California Golf Association Foundation. As the charitable arm of the NCGA, the foundation has been supporting disadvantaged youngsters through golf since 1989. The foundation motivates its young participants to strive for personal growth, endorses a holistic approach that extends beyond the golf course and through scholarships, internships, and career opportunities. More than $2.5 million has been expended by the foundation in Northern California on behalf of these
Bill's been moved and appropriately second.
Thank you. On behalf of these disadvantaged youths across various communities, from Fresno to San Luis Obispo to Sacramento to Humboldt County. And in 2009, the foundation funded scholarships, grants for youth programs in golf, and plenty of golf. Kids who couldn't otherwise afford to pay were treated last year to 90,000 buckets of balls and 60,000 rounds of golf. Not only does the foundation instill in each participant the skills to be successful on the course, but it also provides lessons necessary to make it in life, like confidence, honesty, determination, and sportsmanship, just to name a few. that's reserved for the parents to teach them, sir. And only later in life will they learn the colorful language and creative arithmetic often associated with the great game of golf. The SCR 101 asks the legislature recognize these contributions to the NCGA Foundation that's made to California's underserved youth, and I am asking for your aye vote.
Great. This is, I think, an outstanding bill for California's underserved youth and giving exposure to certainly a game of sport that often those of us who are in the inner cities don't have a chance to be exposed to. So we thank you for this. And if there are no other comments from members, I call for the roll.
Good. Just briefly, I had the opportunity of attending an event that you coordinated for the Northern California Golf Association for Kids, and just appreciate what you're doing in that regard.
Great.
And how important that is. I know we kind of laugh about it, and we had the big debate yesterday, but to take youth that are potentially at risk and head them down the right path is very important.
We had, thank you, Member Gaines, we had the opportunity to meet many of the young kids that are benefiting from this program. They actually came to the Senate floor. We honored them on the Senate floor and presented a resolution. And they're fine young people, and they're really impressive, and actually they're very impressionable too. And after I had a chance to meet with them, and after their experience on the floor, I had two of them actually ask, what do I have to do to become a senator? I would love to do this job, So, I mean, it really is to put them in this kind of an environment and pull them out of the inner city where they grow up is a big opportunity for them. And thank you for your support.
And thank you, Senator. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a real quick story, and I appreciate what you're doing, Senator. I think it's a great idea. In 1998, one of our major golf courses in Orange County wanted to build a second golf course, and I met with the owners in my office, and I asked them, I said, what have you done for the community? I know that you have a nice golf course. And they said, well, we provide, a nice restaurant and nice parking lots and safe environment. And I said, well, actually, I was thinking more back in 1968 when I was a brand new teacher, and I met with you trying to get a special rate for our golf team to play golf there. And I said, I suggested $1,000 a season, and you said if you divide it by 4, we would probably agree to that. So they let us play golf for $250 a year, the entire team.
Wow.
And I said, I think that deserves another golf course. And we've had so many people that have supported young golfers. I think what you're doing is outstanding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Davis.
Aye.
Davis, aye. Silva.
Aye.
Silva, aye. Blumenfeld.
Aye.
Blumenfeld, aye. Calderon.
Aye.
Calderon, aye. De Leon. Gaines. Gaines, aye. Gatto. Gatto, aye. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Strickland. Strickland, aye.
That bill is out, Senator.
Thank you very much, members.
Thank you. Okay. So I think that that concludes our.
Ms. Corbett, how's her second go?
Is she going to? She pull. Yeah, I don't know if she's going to pull it. Hold on, excuse me. We'll take a 1-minute recess. Okay, we don't have the other author here. I don't know, did she pull the bill or?
No, sir, she hasn't. She's
We may
trying
have to
find her votes.
we may have to reschedule that one then because we don't have. I'm sorry. Okay, let's on call. We'll reschedule that other one, and I'm going to adjourn. Why don't we have the recall of the on call first?
The bill is SB 1131. Blumenfield.
Aye.
Blumenfield, aye. That bill's out.
Okay. Mr. DeLeon is not here? Did he have another committee meeting?
Sir, I'm not sure where he is.
Okay. Well, I think we will adjourn and then have Mr. DeLeon to do his add-on.
Okay.
Because I did try to call him earlier.
You have to. You can't adjourn and for him to do his hat on.
Why can't I? I'm going to adjourn because, wait, hold on one second. Do we have any?
Close your microphone.
Do we have any other business? Okay, we're going to leave the roll open for 5 minutes for members to add on.